to the official podcast of the powerful women's cricket lobby. We are here at the Oval for Oval Invincibles v London Spirit in the 100, which looks like it's going to be quite an important fixture in terms of deciding which of these two teams makes it through to the eliminator next weekend. Sid, let's start by talking about the thing that I've just referenced in terms of the powerful women's cricket lobby. That was, of course, a reference to the latest editorial of the CRICKETher magazine, which is quite a big cheese in the UK cricket publications market. Essentially, the editor decided to go on a rant about the 100, and in the editorial refers to the fact that the 100 is still going partly because of this powerful women's cricket lobby.
Yeah, I mean, I seem to have mislaid my membership card for the powerful women's cricket lobby, but I'm trusting that next time I see the editor of the CRICKETher, he'll pass it over to me. I mean, it's that old thing, isn't it? Of when you've felt all your life is privilege, then equality feels like oppression. And there's no way that this stuff is driven by what's happening specifically in the women's game. The women's game, is something that the ECB sell the 100 with, definitely. But if you look at everything that happens around the game, there's no way that the women's cricket lobby is secretly running the 100, let alone the ECB as a whole. I mean, it's ridiculous, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would go as far as to say that essentially it's somebody who, whenever he complains about the 100 on social media or in any kind of public forum, is being told, but isn't it so good for women's cricket? And is so fed up with that he's decided instead to peddle wild conspiracy theories about the idea that somehow women's cricket or the people who care about women's cricket are in charge, which is just quite hilarious. And I do wonder whether it will be worthwhile somebody sitting down with him and actually running through the recent report of the Independent Commission for Equity in Cricket with him and just pointing to him all of the bits about women's cricket which make it very plain that we are absolutely second-class citizens. The female players, what he would describe as the women's cricket lobby, have very, very little influence in the game, and that was roundly critiqued by that commission. So the idea that a middle-aged white bloke who's the editor of the CRICKETher thinks that he's got less power in cricket than I do is just quite staggering, to be honest. Anyway, we just thought that we'd kick off with that. Always good to see the UK media peddling conspiracy theories about women's cricket. Now, in other stories this week within the UK cricket media, there was actually an interesting one by Lizzie Amon in the Times about the 100 and about the future of the 100, and kind of specifically about the ECB's plan to sell it off, Sid.
Yeah, I mean, it was about what's going to happen with the investment for the competition. And I just thought it was really interesting because essentially we've now given up all pretense that the investment that we're about to bring in by selling these stakes in the 100 teams is going to be for anything other than increasing the salaries for the top male players. So Lizzie's wasn't the only article this week that's gone there. We've seen a couple of others as well, but Lizzie's was the most clear. So and she's very plugged into kind of the men's cricket and the wider cricket ecosystem. So if she's saying this, she's reflecting what people are saying to her and what people are thinking behind the scenes. And it feels like only a couple of weeks ago, Raf, that we had one of the Richards on the TMS podcast saying this investment is for the next 20 or 30 years and it's going to provide the foundation of the game over the longer term, and investing in the women's game and all this stuff.
That feels like it was only a couple of weeks ago, Sid, because it was only a couple of weeks ago.
And yet now here we are with them going, look, basically, hey guys, we really need this money because the top players are all going to Major League Cricket and to this new competition in Canada, and in order to attract them to the 100, we need to pay them lots more money. So it's all about can we invest by paying the top male players a lot more money? And it's a worrying strategy because it's just such a short-term thing, because we've taken away this idea that we're investing for the future, and what we're saying is we're going to pay these top male players absolutely top, we'll pay the likes of Josh Bell. I don't want to single anybody out really, but he's the classic example of someone that's playing all over the world and has kind of deprioritised the 100 a bit. So we'll pay them a lot more money, and then they'll come and play in the 100, and then stuff will happen that will be magic. And but what you need to remember is this money it's not short-term money. This is forever money, right? You can't sell another 40. Well, I suppose you could sell another 49%, but you can't sell more than 49% stakes in these teams, and then you've run out of money. And this money was supposed to be for building for the future, and now they're going, well, actually, we're going to just pay it all to the top male players, because otherwise they're not going to play, because otherwise they're too tempted to go. And play in these other tournaments overseas that clash with it. And the other thing to remember, of course, is that these overseas tournaments, they're not static in this. If Major League Cricket, if Josh Butler goes back to Major League Cricket and says, sorry guys, I've decided to play the 100 this year, and then the Indian billionaires that run Major League Cricket are not going to go, oh, well, my pockets are dry, Josh, sorry, so be it. Of course they're not. They've invested a lot of money in Major League Cricket. They want to make it a success. If Josh Butler goes and is going, well, the ECB are offering me 200,000, they'll go, well, 300,000, then come and play. And it's just going to ratchet up. So it's not even a strategy that's going to work, because in 5 years' time, they will have increased their salaries so much more. So,
now, of course, that's a little bit of a rant about salaries in men's cricket, which perhaps isn't necessarily our bag usually on the CRICKETher Weekly. But what it does do is suggest that everything that's being written about where this money is going to be invested does not suggest that it's going to be invested in the future of the women's game, let alone this thing that the ICEC, the Independent Commission for Cricket Equity, actually recommended, which was equal pay in the 100, and argued that there was actually a really, really good case for that, and a really strong case for that. That's meant to be happening within a couple of years. Well, if this, however many millions of pounds of investment that the ECB are going to attract in the 100 is going to be going on paying the men more, well, that's just going to be a pipe dream then, isn't it? Because the whole point was meant to be an equalisation of salaries, or at least the ECB could argue that they're moving towards that by raising the salaries of the top women while leaving the men's salaries as static. So for all that they're doing with this millions of pounds is putting it into paying the men more, then it's totally moving away from that goal. And it's basically the ECB just doing what Lord Botham said that he did, and tearing up the ICEC report and putting it in the bin, isn't it?
Well,
sorry.
You said it, Raf. Yeah.
So I feel quite anxious and disappointed about the whole thing in a way that I expressed a couple of weeks ago at the beginning of the 100. Shall we talk a little bit about the actual cricket though, Sid? Because in terms of the cricket that we've seen over the last week, since we recorded the last CRICKETher Weekly, it's actually been some brilliant stuff. Well, we have no idea what's going on in the men's competition, don't care, but in the women's competition it's been brilliant, hasn't it?
It has been. I mean, certainly my impression is that the fans of the men's competition have been disappointed this year. If you're a fan of the women's competition, we've had some fantastic games, and it's still a great tournament. You still get to watch the best players in the world, and it's been brilliant. We've really enjoyed it. So what things have we particularly enjoyed this week?
Well, we came to the Oval, didn't we? And actually saw a game not from the press box, but as fans, didn't we?
We did. We sat over there somewhere in the stands. We left our press passes at home, and we came in with a credit card, which took a severely deadly beating at the Pimm's bar, thanks to Raf's Persian for a glass of Pimm's. It was
a great day. So that was Invincibles v Brave, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we enjoyed that game. I mean, it was rain affected, which was unfortunate. Everyone had to go and hide under the stands. Luckily, there is an under the stands here where there's enough space for people to hide. But it just meant the bars did even better business. I think in some ways the Oval won't have been too disappointed with that. But when they got back on, the ground staff did great work, and we saw the Brave kind of pull a win out of the bag. Hasn't done them any good in the long term, because they are now officially out of the tournament. So we've been running our Alligator, our tool that goes through all the possibilities of qualification, and the main thing at the moment is that the Brave are out. That's the only big deal, right? The Fire could have qualified yesterday, but they didn't win their match, so the Brave out, and it's not been a good season for them, but I'm sure that they'll win.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the way the table looks at the moment, Welsh Fire still top, despite that loss to Birmingham Phoenix yesterday. Second place is Superchargers, and then London Spirit in third place, and Oval Invincibles in fourth, which makes the match that we're about to watch quite important. Possibly by the time you're watching this, the result of that will be known. As you've just said, Southern Brave bringing up the rear of the table this year. Manchester Originals in second to last place as well. They've had a tough time with it.
Yeah, I mean, what's going on with Manchester Originals? I mean, I think that the big issue with Manchester Originals is that they can't take wickets. They're not taking wickets. They've got the lowest number of wickets per game in the entire tournament, and yet they have the best bowler in the world, Sophie Ecclestone. What's going on at Manchester Originals, Raf?
Yeah, well, I did write a piece that reflected a little bit on this after the match where we saw them lose to the Spirit at Lord's a couple of days ago. I mean, obviously they've been affected a bit by injuries, which is a bit beyond their control, and that has kind of dented the bowling attack that they hoped to have. So they'd secured Sophie Molyneux from the draft. She's been was ruled out a little while ago. Some kind of nasty rib injury sustained while in Australia, so they then had to get in Kim Garth as backup, which isn't really like for like. I mean, it's not like for like at all.
But it's still an Australian international, still.
Yeah, absolutely. But I guess that when you go in the draft, you plan things, don't you? And you plan your team around that.
Yes.
So that disrupts things. The obviously other big disruption for Manchester Originals was losing Mahika Gore right on the eve of the tournament to injury. So that's made things a bit tricky. But the key thing is that Sophie Ecclestone is not taking wickets in the way that we have seen her do so frequently and so consistently for England. She's obviously been given the captaincy again for the second year in a row, and you just have to start questioning whether having to do that captaincy role is affecting her bowling. Because it feels to me that she's not somebody who captaincy comes naturally to. She's somebody who really has to think about it. And actually, when she's playing for England, she's able to just kind of focus on her own bowling. And captaincy in cricket it does add a lot to the burden of somebody, and particularly somebody like Ecclestone, who, with that bowling attack that she's got, is kind of carrying it often. It was interesting that we spoke to the Manchester Originals head coach after that match at Lord's, and he said, well, she's still early in her captaincy journey and she's still learning. And I think putting that on somebody in the 100, which is a huge stage, and especially when things haven't totally gone to plan, it just adds a lot of pressure. It does perhaps speak to some of the questions about could Ecclestone be the next England captain as well, because I think that from what we've seen, the answer to that really should be no, because even if you think, well, she's doing interesting things as a captain, and even if you think she's going to grow as a captain, as a domestic captain, if it's going to impact on her bowling in the short term, can England really afford to take that risk? She's so crucial to them,
Absolutely.
Especially in T20 cricket. So I think that's been quite interesting, and you wonder the extent to which kind of Heather Knight and John Lewis are sort of looking at that and taking that into account. I mean, I guess in some ways it's not going to be Heather Knight's problem, it's maybe not going to be John Lewis's problem, but we know that the 100 is being monitored very closely this year in the build-up to the World Cup, so that's kind of been one of my takeaways. Sid?
Just on the subject of the England captaincy, Raf, the other thing that we saw out here when we were here in the week was Alice Capsey taking on a little bit of a captaincy role.
Yeah.
Obviously, the captain out on the field, is still Lauren Winfield Hill.
Yeah.
She's still in charge, but of course she's behind the stumps, which means that she's not able to. They're very hot, obviously. You have to get through your overs, or you get penalised in the final over. So she can't go down and keep talking to the bowler all the time. Alice Capsey's been doing that job. Alice Capsey's been moving the field around, and that's actually been really interesting to see. And maybe she is going to surprise us, because we thought that she was going to be out there. We didn't think that she was the right kind of person for England captain, but there's obviously something going on here. So well, maybe she is the future.
Well, Sid, on that note, actually talking of the future England captaincy, you've had a good week because your touted future England captain, Grace Scrivens, has hit her first 50 for Trent Rockets in the 100s, and she's actually had a few good innings this year, and kind of being given that consistent role at the top of the order opening, which is in huge contrast with what she was ever given to do at London Spirit, has been really important for her development, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that 50 is going to prove to be the most important innings of her career, actually, because I think it's defining. I think it's going to be more important than the double 100 she hits in an Ashes Test in 10 years' time. It's going to be more important than the 70 she hits in a World Cup semi-final in 5 years' time.
No pressure.
No, but seriously, I think it's a defining innings, and that she's really shown that she can do it. And I think the credit to John Lewis and the coaching staff at Trent Rockets, because what they've done is they've given her a role that says you're going in at the top of the order, but actually you can chill about this a little bit, because other people are going to play the really big shots around you, Other people are going to be the ones hitting out. But you just make sure, focus on doing your own thing. You play that anchor role. An anchor role in a T20 game, even, let alone a 100 game, you still have to score pretty quickly. But she actually is scoring quickly. She's scoring well more than a run a ball. She's hit a couple of well more than a run a ball 30s in this 50, and it's been fantastic to see. And I'm, big up to the coaching team for putting her in that position where she can really shine. And I think this is the future. I think she's shown that given the right environment, she actually can do it in short form cricket, and that's brilliant news for the future, brilliant news for England, brilliant news for Grace Scrivens, and brilliant news for me, I suppose. I don't know why it's brilliant news for me, but it should be.
Well, you're proving everyone else wrong, aren't you, I suppose? So there must be a certain amount of karmic satisfaction in that. It only remains, Sid, because we've got a few days left of the 100, and then by the time we record next week's episode, it's all going to be done and dusted, and we're going to know who the winners are. So it only remains for us to give our predictions for the two teams who are going to reach the eliminator, and then who they're going to play in the final, and who's going to win the final. So shall I go first? Okay. So I think that it's going to be that I think that Invincibles are going to win today, and that in the eliminator is going to be Oval Invincibles against the Pop Chips, the Northern Superchargers. I think that Welsh Fire are going to end up topping the table, going straight through to the final where they will meet the Superchargers. So I think that the Superchargers will win that eliminator, and then I am backing Welsh Fire to win in the final this year. They were cruelly robbed last year.
Here at the Oval.
Here at the Oval.
Thanks to the rain.
Thanks to the rain. So I think that they're going to dramatically come back from that and win the whole comp. What do you think?
Well, I think I'm going to back the Invincibles. It does very much come down to who wins out here today. It's not a total guarantee, but whoever wins out of Invincible Spirits here today are in pole position. They'll go through to the eliminator against the Pop Chips. I expect the Pop Chips to win that. The Pop Chips have had a fantastic time with the ball, particularly Lindsay Smith and Annabelle Sutherland, both been bowling brilliantly. That's been the key to their success this season, and I think that's going to carry them through to the final, actually. And I think the Pop Chips are going to beat the Fire in the final, thanks to the strength of their bowling attack, because they've got two brilliant bowlers that have both really learned to play to their own strengths. And I think that could be too much for the Fire.
Well, if anyone wants to send us some free bags of Pop Chips, we'll put our address below the line in the YouTube description. We won't really, and feel free to send them over, and then maybe I'll change my prediction. I'm very happy to eat more Pop Chips this week. Anyway, we're going to enjoy some cricket. The sun's out. It should be a really good match. It's definitely going to be a very important match, and we will see you in a week's time. Bye.
Bye.